Hello.
Hey everybody, how are you? Been a while.
Yeah. Happy New Year, late Happy New Year, early Happy Martin Luther King Day. Mark, it seems like the Chinese are really good at making a short story long. I guess they thought that the trial of the person for whom you've been deputy for a couple decades plus, Jimmy Lai, the pro democracy tycoon in Hong Kong who created Apple Daily, the most popular tabloid that committed the high crime of being pro democracy and being popular with the public in Hong Kong, got shut down. Company obliterated, Jimmy arrested, solitary confinement for many years now, since just after Christmas 2020. My God, it's 2026. And the trial dragged on. I guess the Chi-Coms thought they were doing themselves some favor. I thought Jimmy came across quite as well, even though it was a kangaroo court. And now we're in this sort of netherworld where he's been found guilty of crimes under the national security law, which basically a law that says, they can do whatever they want. You remember that line from, I can't remember if it's Fletch or the second Fletch, where they tell Fletch he's under arrest and he says, "What's the crime?" And the sheriff goes, "Pissing me off."
Yeah.
And then Fletch, being the smartass, asks, "Well, is that a felony or a misdemeanor?" Hong Kong, that's a felony.
Yeah.
But so you have the conviction, don't mean to make light of it. And we're in this phase where you don't know the sentence. And it seems to be something they are belaboring. I don't quite understand why, because I don't think it's to their advantage to doing this. I think they've screwed this up. But am I wrong? And where do you think things are? You're the one, of course, you know, since you lived there for many, many decades and have known Jimmy for longer still.
Well, I think first of all, what we've seen basically, I've always, of course, Beijing's always been calling the shots really since 1997, but the degree of which they've taken over, really under Xi Jinping 2016, they really stepped it up and took it over. And of course, after 2020, we've got the national security divisions down there. We've got people you can't take their pictures because they're members of the national security from the mainland, all types of things. They've got, my point being is they're just, it's now firmly a Chinese city in every way. Jimmy has a long history. It goes back to Tiananmen, of being a thorn in their side, and I think that's what he's being punished for. I look at the crimes that they're accusing him of, and it doesn't make sense. We're a pro-democracy newspaper. He was doing journalism, and he was, running a pro-democracy newspaper that basically had a point of view. But the idea that he was a mastermind, or we were like working in collusion with other people, is kind of ridiculous. The Hong Kong democracy movement is akin to herding cats, which is like most good democracy movements.
Right.
Basically, nobody does that. So it's kind of ridiculous to make those assumptions. Here's China's problem. They've bought into the narrative that Jimmy Lai is their problem. And because they bought into the narrative that Jimmy Lai is their problem, it's hard for them to find a way out. But Donald Trump is sitting there offering them a way out. Just free the guy, have him come over. He'll do what Jimmy's 78. He's going to come out and he's got some serious medical issues now. He's going to take a lot of time off. He comes out, probably doesn't even do the interview, moves into seclusion for a little while, and life moves on in life. China doesn't have to deal with him anymore. They've taken his businesses, they've locked him up for 5 years, moving into six. They've basically driven his family out of there. He has nothing left there. They've made an example out of him. There's no chance of a Jimmy Lai repeating. But there is a chance of three things happening that's very detrimental to them with China. First of all, Jimmy becomes just a permanent sore. If they don't free him when Kerr Starmer goes at the end of this month, January, then they've got another build up to Donald Trump. If Donald Trump comes back with no deal on Jimmy Lai, he's going to get a lot of grief. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to step up and say, "What happened? Why did this happen? What went wrong?" Okay, it's going to be what went wrong if you don't bring Jimmy back. So that's not good for China. That's the first thing. In other words, if you drag it out, it's not good for China. Second thing is, if he dies, he's 78, he's diabetic, he's got problems. Okay, and they're going out of their way to make it extra uncomfortable in there. I won't go into all the details, but it's obvious that they are going out of their way to make his life a little bit more difficult inside prison. If he dies in prison, you've got a couple of things that'll happen there. He'll probably be put up as martyr because of his Catholic faith and his adherence to the faith when he's in prison. So they're going to have to deal with that. And then the other thing is that you're basically giving the opposition inside China and inside Hong Kong somebody who's not insubstantial. I mean, this is a substantial man who's got a lot of writings, who's got a lot of stuff up on video. What are they going to do? Control YouTube? I don't think so. There'll be people splicing and cutting Jimmy, and it'll be all over the place. So the fact of the matter is that that's their problem. And their final problem is this: is Xi Jinping has yet to completely. I wrote a column one time. He puts on the black hat. You know what I'm saying? But the difference is right now, in the eyes of Americans, in the eyes of the West, nobody likes him. People know what he is. But this will be where he's shot somebody in the back on screen. You know what I'm saying? In other words, then he'll be the full villain. And I know that sounds odd, but it's like everybody knows there's an easy out here. Even the Japanese are saying something. Even the Singaporeans are saying something like this. Let the guy go.
Shocking.
They're privately talking. We know they're privately talking to him. Jimmy's getting support from the Irish Prime Taoiseach, whatever he is. The Prime Minister, the President, said something to Xi Jinping the other day. This is an issue that is really going to haunt them. And Donald Trump is sitting there, as is Keir Starmer, saying, hey, here's the way out. Free the guy on your terms, however you want to free him. Put him in a hospital in London, UK for 6 months. We all know in the world that is today, Europe, you're done after that. You're not. The media event is not there. If Jimmy dies in prison, well, that's a media event they don't control. Now, the question really is, does Xi Jinping think Jimmy is more of a threat out, or does he think he's more of a threat in with all these downsides? I'm hoping, and I'm starting to believe they're going to come to the former conclusion, that essentially it's probably easier to release him, get rid of him, trade him for some spies, which would make sense for them. In other words, you called him a spy, so trade him for some spies. I think the U.S. and some other countries would probably give up something for Jimmy and some others. But it's a huge problem for them, and I don't think they sometimes really grasp it. And the real problem is that Hong Kong, once they get rid of Jimmy, they're going to have what else is going to keep happening? I mean, it's constantly going to be on the front burner if they don't start taking some moves to move things away. And yeah, you're going to continue to have other people on trial, but at least they can point and say, well, we handled Jimmy, he's out, he was 78, these other people will handle them too. It takes the temperature down quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know if I guess it might be more complicated in Beijing, but from here it looks like a simple binary choice between you make the guy a martyr and you let him go in like a lot of dissidents. And this is also true, I think, of others who have been convicted under the national security law in Hong Kong, who, like Jimmy, should just be expelled. And then, it's done with. Some will have a moment in the sun. Others won't. I think you and I have talked about the people who survived Tiananmen Square, who saw the mass murder there, who had to, run. Frankly, a lot of them went to Hong Kong, and then we got them out quietly. But certainly they were listened to for a while and received for a while, but eventually their information becomes old. They don't, they seem very focused on one horrible event, and their power erodes. If you look at people who were expelled from the Soviet Union, similarly, maybe a day in the sun, maybe not. But the flip side, if you make someone a martyr, as you point out, there's all this content that then just jumps up in popularity. I don't want to make light of suicide, but just to use a popular analogy, especially when a singer or an actor dies young, Kurt Cobain, Nirvana, I don't know if Nirvana would be, I don't know if Nirvana would be sort of, the true source and lodestar of grunge were it not for what happened to Cobain.
No, I mean, let's face it, Nirvana's music's okay, but if Kurt Cobain wouldn't have died, basically they'd be, part of the reunion tour, maybe probably not at the Holiday Inn, but probably at least at the Big Bowl or something like that in Cleveland. Yeah, I mean, it's
Hilton Garden Inn.
It's like somebody told me one about James Dean. People don't really realize James Dean was not this. He was one of many actors.
Three movies, yeah.
Yeah,
but yeah,
they were good, but he was one of many, many actors. And when he died, of course, he took on this thing. And so I just think it was Marlon Brando said something like that. It was really off-putting, but it was true. It was like, yeah, he was okay. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, he passed away. He died, and that's what they don't really understand. They don't get that. And who also doesn't get that, and I don't want to jump, is we just saw the Canadian Prime Minister,
Yes.
World Economic Forum, Mr. Carney, come back from Beijing, where he basically gave away the store, and here's my take on that. My take is really, this is a personal thing. I think Carney is such an arrogant man. He hates Donald Trump so much. This is Donald Trump's trade deal with China, because Carney was so desperate to get something that the Chinese got everything they wanted. They even got an information sharing and security agreement out of the Canadians, which is going to be a huge problem. So I mean, what are we going to? We're going to have a reverse, a man called Intrepid, like where we're going to have to go across the border and start whacking Chinese agents. Remember the old World War II when the guy in Canada came down and he was whacking Germans and others. You know what I'm saying? I mean, no, it's a great story, but it's true. But it's a great story. A little bit overhyped. But the fact of the matter is, he called a new world order with Canada and China. What the hell is he saying? What he is? Here's the guy.
It's a real juggernaut. This is like Germany and Italy getting together.
Oh no, it gets better. It gets better. You know who's driving all of this? His wife.
Oh God.
Oh no, she's one of these really wacko, complete wacko. Yeah, hold on a second. Damn it. Get off the phone, Mark. I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
We gotta edit that out, Mark.
That's allowed. We'll try. We're live. It's live to tape though, so we'll see.
All right. But the thing is like, but the thing I should have turned that off. I'm sorry.
That's quite.
The thing is that
once who was the U.S. Trade Representative Lighthizer in Trump's first term? He was on Kudlow's show and his phone went off, and he not only picked it up and looked at it, it looked like he was thinking about answering it. But so is Carney? Are the Canadians? I mean, is it the wife, or are they just afraid because they're over a barrel because their economy is so tied to the U.S. and they've selectively raised tariffs and enacted protectionism on things like Canadian dairy and that's going away. But it sounds like the Brits. They think that the Chinese are the solution to their problem when the Chinese are the other problem, honestly.
Well, I mean, look, the Brits, Starmer's going over and he's telling everybody he's got a $1 billion deal of investment, like $200 million a year. I'm telling you right now, I think I've done $200 million a year in deals. You know what I'm saying? I've done $200 million a year in transactions. So what I'm saying is, if Starmer wants to cut a trade deal with somebody, like we can get him to like not go, I will, unless he gets Jimmy out, you know what I'm saying? I will come up with the $1 billion over 5 years. I promise you, guarantee I could do it. I bet people would join me just for the heck of it. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, and I'd have real jobs. I wouldn't have like fake EV jobs or.
Yeah, well, you could go like, for example, have Jaguar make cars instead of sexually ambiguous advertisements.
It is it, but look, the problem the Canadians have is there's two things that mark this turn here. First of all, they've had mass migration, and that mass migration has changed the country. Now, for the upside is they've gotten a lot of people from India and some places who don't get along with the Chinese, don't like China. So that's actually helped them quite a bit. I mean, I think even in the U.S., once we get our Indian immigration H-1B scam stuff off the table, I think the Indians are really going to be a fabulous addition to the country. We've just got to do a couple of things. Basically, we've got to get that. It's as bad as the Somali scam, to be honest with you. And they use
the H-1B sort of
the H-1B
labor trade.
Yeah, it's
the new triangular trade, but there's no rum involved.
It's a scam. Everybody knows it's a scam, and unfortunately, CEOs of Microsoft and everybody else, portray it, and also the Indian government pushes through with it. So, I mean, they just hired Jason Miller for like what $800,000 a month or something like that. That was like in the press recently, to work on this. It was amazing how much he took for it. I think they're.
I just heard he only does 7 figures, so he may have cut them a deal. Big marketing name.
Well, no, that's per month. So
okay.
So yeah, he did that. But the thing is that. So you've got these deals here, and so I tend to think that what's happening with Carney is that's the first thing. So the Canada that we always thought was Canada is like the Britain we always thought was Britain, or like the Georgia we thought was Georgia in 2020. You know what I'm saying? And it was not the Georgia we thought was Georgia, although they cheated a lot, but there was a lot of other things going on. And so it's changed. That's the first thing. So there is this unawareness. In other words, it's business. People aren't really jumping up and down. You don't have your constituency. I think that'll change. But the other thing that's really happened is that Carney is a WEF. He's a World Economic Forum guy, and he hates Trump. It is impossible to overstate that. I talk to people, I do a lot of business in Canada. I talk to people who know Trump. Who know Carney. I've met Carney once. I'm pretty sure. Jimmy met Carney in Italy a couple of times.
Huh.
Which really makes Carney look bad because you met this guy, you've broken bread with him, you know him. You're directly asked if you'll help out, and the answer is no. It's like,
Well, this is so interesting. All these countries want to say that, well, we want an independent foreign policy. We don't want to be the junior partner to the U.S. or to be bossed around. And the funny thing is, Japan used to say that, and some of us who were big Japan supporters said, "Okay, well, just do stuff then. Do what you want or say what you want." And then there's sort of like a pause. Now Japan, I think, has stepped into an equal role. We see it, their statements on Taiwan and the election of Takaishi. But Canada, it's like, okay, you don't like big bully Donald Trump. I mean, so go and have a foreign policy.
Yeah, I actually agree with Peter Navarro. I think Canada probably needs to leave Five Eyes. I've always believed New Zealand for a while needed to leave it. We need to have three eyes, and we don't even need those eyes because it's a different world now.
Yeah.
Five Eyes was there when we need to put bases there to listen to people. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it was formed at a different time, and basically somebody told me one time when I was criticizing New Zealand, I said, "What do we get out of New Zealand?" And the guy said, basically, he said we probably got some guy in New Zealand sitting there with a hat with like rollers coming out of it, like sitting there, looks like the guy Rick Moranis from Ghostbusters, you know what I'm saying, picking up signals. I mean, that's
spying on what's going on.
Yeah, we
right?
think that's the case. I mean, that's probably what we have. I mean, what does New Zealand offer us?
No, I heard it was also satellites in a polar orbit, but guess what? We have Alaska. I mean, plenty of ways to crack that.
I've never bought into these things, and I think very quickly we learn. As I told people, we learn very quickly that it's all full. They're all full of shit. As I told somebody. But I do think that, excuse my language, but I mean, I do think that the Canadians have put themselves in a real predicament here. So, for example, they're going to let in 67,000 Chinese electronic vehicles because the Chinese are desperate to get in the U.S. And I'm open about this. I find people who are trying to import electrical vehicles to the United States, I really find those people to be unpatriotic. I mean, that's really anybody who's promoting electronic vehicles from China into the U.S., you are not a good American because you're basically taking what you know is going to happen. You're taking state subsidy, state supported, completely government controlled Chinese companies and taking good American jobs. Mm-hmm. And you have, and that's why the tech guys in California, no, I don't care about them. I don't care about you because I know what you want to do. That's why David Sachs is the worst person in the administration, and Sri Krisim, all these tech guys who are in the administration. And Carney is that person. Imagine his base of support is Ontario. That's where his base of support is.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you if you think Quebec.
Doug Ford's going crazy. I was just thinking,
might peel off. And what about Alberta? Might they become independent or part of America?
I think Alberta with this deal could go to. What people always forget about Alberta is Alberta. I mean, you're from that area. Alberta is not Canadians. Alberta is basically people from America, Texans, and everybody who went north in the history, and they became Canadians. They are Canadians, but the mentality, Alberta is much closer to Wyoming and Montana than they are Ontario. My understanding is the move for them to leave now is very real. I was reading when I was in Canada. I was in Montreal and Quebec last week, and I was reading, and I thought it was, and also I was watching too. When you watch the TV, you get a feel for it. But most people think at this point in time, a referendum would get at least 40 to 45% of the vote.
In Quebec or in Alberta?
In Alberta. Quebec, I don't think is going anywhere because they've been pretty much satisfied. They get everything they need, and it's a new generation. And also, they have a large immigrant population, and that immigrant population basically are Canadian, all waiting to come to America, by the way. That's the other thing you learn in Canada really quickly. They all go to Canada, but they're all trying to get to the U.S.
Yeah, well, it's warmer here. We don't have poutine, but there is capitalism here, so
God, who?
you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I understand poutine. That basically, you have to put calories on in the winter, so that's what they eat. But but no, I think with Canada, I think this is a real thing, and also it's kind of changed me on Greenland.
Hmm.
I mean, I agreed
That's
that
all.
I agree we had. Well, I'm not crazy about the rhetoric with Greenland. I think,
Yeah, I mean, the idea might be to have a plan before you sort of go with the acerbic rhetoric,
yeah,
but
the idea that you fly
these are
people up
these
there,
are these are.
and then you send them up there. Also, I've been to Nuuk, like I tell people, and I said the
Yeah, that's
idea,
weird.
yeah, many years ago. But the one thing I tell people is that I never. If you want to know how bad the U.S. press corps, Apple Daily, we'd have stopped. We'd have had Trump in 5 seconds. My first question to President Trump would have been, if it was my reporter, I'd have said, ask him how many children from Greenland and how many he wants to kill, and what's the acceptable body count of children from Greenland and Danes, and what's his plans for setting up camps to house people. And that started to come out. And I think when he was talking about military force, Trump's problem is, to be perfectly honest with you, I think Trump's rhetoric is a little unsettling, but it's Trump.
Mm.
Okay. And he kind of can walk it back. He controls it, so it goes where he wants to go. But the problem is the people around him. And so when you have his people around him and his influencers talking about they don't really have a military that can stop us. Okay, hold on 1 second. You're going to kill Greenlanders to take this place? Because they're going to fight. I've been there. I've met them. I know them. They're going to fight. I mean, no, they're going to fight. And I will tell you also, the Danes are going to fight. And then all of a sudden, we're in what? We've destroyed NATO. We really want to, here's my point. We really want to go into 2026 election year with U.S. troops, you know, conducting raids in Nook. You know what I'm saying? Raiding Eskimo shelters because they're seen as that. The problem is sometimes they get ahead of themselves at the White House and they threaten people and there's like, okay, we say it, it'll go on Fox, it'll go on Newsmax, and that's it. And I don't think they really understood how badly this has affected them. But I do think now that over, I think they've brought back the rhetoric somewhat. Trump's now talking about financial punishment. So he's walked back all the
Yeah.
violence.
Well, he's thinking about money, and he has Besant on the Iran situation. Excuse me. One question, you mentioned Starmer before. I'm not an expert on Labour Party politics in the UK, but judging from afar, I think Labour is now in third place. Maybe there. It's so you have UK Reform, which is Nigel Farage, the Tories, who are terrible and have been for decades, but they will always have at least 35-40% support, maybe less. I don't know. And then Labor. In Starmer, so the Labor still has what, 3.5 years left on its mandate before it has to call elections. If it called elections today, it would lose dramatically. At some point or other, I guess other Labor leaders, if there are any, will stab Starmer in the back, replace him, and hope you get some sort of record of accomplishment and popularity to either call a snap election and extend your mandate, or when that mandate anyway. You have this very unpopular guy, and once again, this British dream, which I think you can trace to like the 18th century, that China is going to be the solution to their economic problems. You see that with Carney. This is just a recurring thing. Do you think I mean, do you think, I mean, this sort of in one way gives Starmer a license to be tough, because what does he have to lose? I mean, really, he should be swinging for the bleachers at this point, because he's probably in the final months of his political career.
Yeah, I mean,
But,
I don't know if you found that I heard this, but I was with, of course, with our British friends last week. And, Starmer, if an election was held today, he would lose his seat to the Green Party candidate.
it's probably some super pinko seat. Is it right in London? It's right in Mayfair, probably.
Yeah, so he's in some super pinko area, and so yeah, you're right. So
Mm-hmm.
that's it. So he would lose his seat, so that's a big deal. But here's the thing with Starmer is I kind of like Starmer in one way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like my soft spot for Nancy Pelosi. Republicans don't realize the real damage that Nancy Pelosi does to Republicans when she was Speaker and how she's been there is she's kept their crazies in complete check.
Ah, yes, yes, the AOCs.
She AOCs, the Ilham Omars, all these people. She kept them in check. She's gone now. Jeffries is an incompetent. In other words, like somebody told me the other day, maybe Jeffries as Speaker of the House won't be great for us, but I wonder how damaging it's going to be. You're going to have Jamie Raskin holding his hearings, Ro Khanna running for president, all these guys doing stuff, and the administration will be standing there with a big middle finger to them. As long as you control the Senate, you know what I'm saying, you have things doing. They're going to shut down government, and essentially, what's going to happen is we're going to see the craziest of crazy people if they control the House in 2026, and going forward, from that going forward, those crazy people are the people we run against in 2028.
That is the silver lining, I think. That I mean, and so David Plouffe, I forget if I'm pronouncing that right, had something in the New York Times about sort of warning Democrats not to take too much solace from off year, not even midterms, odd numbered year elections that they just had in Jersey, where you are, and Virginia, where they did well, because there's this problem, and especially in that Mandami. Are they going to focus on economic issues? Are they going to try and find their Bill Clinton or Tony Blair, who incidentally just turned up on this peace
look at
committee,
the ICE
or are they
stuff.
going to go nuts? And I think they really want to go
Nuts.
completely nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, did you see that Babylon Bee thing? Minnesota has replaced their state bird with the shrieking Karen.
Gotta say, Minneapolis, I think, is becoming the new Detroit. It's not coming through this with a good reputation.
No, but the thing is, Minneapolis is brilliant by ICE. First of all, they've got a police force of about 600, which is basically 600 guys who just wish ICE would clear everybody out. You know what I'm saying? So they can't control the streets. They don't have enough cops. They can't recruit cops because when you go into the police interview, essentially you're asked if a man, I'm not kidding you. I actually talked to a guy who said this is a true question in the Minneapolis police. I think it's probably been removed by now, but they would ask you your opinion on transgender and all these things. You would interview with someone who was not in the police force. And, the way you get cops is you want guys who want justice, they want decency, they're going to stand up for the small guy. And no, they're recruiting basically, 200-pound, transgender. That's what they spent a huge amount of money on that. But they are, for Trump, I think Minneapolis and it's the perfect place for us. I mean, you've got a kleptomaniac society in the Somalis that's corrupt, completely at odds with American society. There's a lot of problems. I'm surprised we haven't had any real reaction from them, other than the fact a lot of them are leaving. You've got Jacob Fry, the mayor, who is just this pathetic. He reminds me of that the character from when Mars Invades, the mayor. You know what I'm saying? Like, he'll do any dance they want him to do, and you've got lawlessness. And the fact of the matter is, you've got this brilliant thing. I mean, I'm not a fan of the shooting. I wish the guy wouldn't have shot her. You know what I'm saying on that? I mean, but by the same token, don't try to run over a cop. You know what I'm saying? In other words, all this stuff set it up there. And I'm firmly on the side of law enforcement. But here's the whole thing. Essentially, people are going, oh, well, Trump could be getting tired of it. It's January in Minneapolis. It's freezing outside. At the height of this thing, they got like 9,000 people out for a demonstration in Minneapolis. Trump keeps going. Third week in February, he keeps this going for another 3 weeks. Just like he left Chicago, he goes, well, we cleaned up Minneapolis. We exported. We got our 4,000. We're going to do, we're going back and we're going to go someplace else. We're going to go to a red state where, you know what I'm saying? Because once you get police support, because see, this was an interesting thing that was made, not to be too boring, but when they follow you, they have to violate traffic laws. Mm-hmm. In other words, right. The ICE guys can run red lights with their sirens. You can't follow them.
Right, good point. Yeah.
So in Florida, and even in Virginia, and even in other places, the police will enforce those traffic laws. So basically, the people who are following ICE get pulled over. The ICE just drives an extra mile. The guy behind them to try to find them, and Karens back there, or whoever, they are, they're turning left, going down the wrong lane. They get pulled over for a traffic violation. And ICE goes along their merry way. And then they're out looking for them again. And while they're looking for them, they're violating. And so the police can help you. So, you're not going to have these incidences. And also, once you have them turning people over to you, then you're okay. You know what I'm saying? But I think we're going to see more and more targeted enforcement. Trump's going to hit 500,000. All the people who are screaming. But I think, probably starting in March, we're going to see a different type of enforcement. And that'll be a little bit more low key. It won't give people to come out in the streets and things like that. And, and we can count on whenever you need them, the ICE to come out. But I think Minneapolis has been a huge success for Republicans because I think it shows.
Right. Which sort of brings me back to where you think Trump is, because the Democrats, if you look at it, and again, I love to hate read the New York Times, since we had a guest on this program, Kelly Sadler, who said she did it, and she's a friend, so I started doing it. And they have still 5 stories every day. I'm exaggerating only a little bit. They will have 5 stories on Minneapolis every day, but still multiple stories on this woman who I didn't want to be killed either, although, I was talking to a friend who was FBI, and he said the officer who shot was probably justified under the law and under regulation, but he himself would have tried to jump out of the way, but, you don't want to second guess necessarily the man on the spot. But anyway, everyone on the left really thinks they're onto something here. They think they're winning. At the end of the day, this is the enforcement of laws that were on the books and that no one seemed to be upset with. And frankly, Biden didn't enforce them much, but Obama did in some circumstances. He deported a whole lot of people. And I just see, people look at this anarchy. I mean, I'm not in love with, I just think when I was growing up, we used to have friends when we were kids who went to Europe would say, wow, it was the weirdest thing. I was in the airport in Rome and there was a police officer with a machine gun. The idea of seeing cops in military garb in the United States carrying rifles, not a huge fan of it. Wish we didn't be it, but it's probably the world we live in. And I'm sure if I were a cop, I'd want the body armor and the helmet and the machine gun.
No, it's like me with the Secret Service at the White House. I would prefer if they were in dress uniforms and looked like New Jersey State Troopers. In fairness, you know what I'm saying? I don't see why they have to be. I don't see why they have to be wearing all this body stuff. If they rip their pants while they're taking down a demonstrator, we'll buy them a new pair of pants. Okay.
Right. And you can keep the guys in the cat suits behind, on the roof, behind a closed door somewhere, so they're available. But Banana Republic-like. It looks like it actually conveys. This is actually a digression of a digression, but when riots were about to happen in LA after Rodney King, you see the LAPD out there, and they don't look like the Marines. They have a helmet on. But aside from that, they're still in their short sleeve, Sipowicz uniforms, and they have nightsticks. So it's basically just what LAPD wears every day, plus a helmet. And I think that actually conveys a confidence in, we don't need a lot of sophisticated stuff to beat your ass if you try and close down the interstate or start throwing rocks or whatever. Anyway, that's a digression, but I think what the point I'm trying to make. Go ahead.
It does mean something. I mean, if Trump wants to have his ballroom, but who's going to be standing outside the ballroom? The guys in the cat suits?
Right.
It's
not exactly Buckingham Palace.
President, but other than the problem is the problem is the software. I mean, I run hotels, Mr. President. It's like, Mr. President, I run hotels, and my guys came to me and they said, oh, we would like to wear just shirts behind the counter. And I'm like, well, we're a 4-diamond property. You're not wearing shirts behind the counter. Somebody had that idea that people are more comfortable. I don't give a shit if you're more comfortable or not. Put on a coat and tie. And most people want to be in a coat and tie or be in a uniform. We put you in a uniform, And so my thing is that we're digressing here a little bit, I know, but my thing is I think when it comes to ICE, I think essentially, we are seeing the people who they are. And it's amazing. You think about the pushback. They tried to do a George Floyd or whatever his name is.
Right? Yes.
After that, I don't really mind that I don't really know who he is. I mean, he's not Martin Luther King. You know what I'm saying? It's not, he's not a famous civil rights guy. He's a guy who unfortunately was, again, killed by a police officer. It was sad. It was tragic. I'm not one of these guys. I don't understand this whole get this guy out of jail campaign. You know what I'm saying? That seems like a little ridiculous to me. but maybe he doesn't need to be in as long as they're going to have him in there. But the fact of the matter is, he did stand on a guy's neck, and and a jury found him guilty. And I think it happened. What happened. But I don't think that this is going to be what they want it to be. I'll tell you what, we have like some next door and some local things that I look through every once in a while. And in Morristown here in New Jersey, they just started picking up people. And so we've had the rally out in the town, the usual suspects, stop ICE, all that stuff. And it's like, all the people are out there doing their things. And you know what? If you go to the comment section, if there's 400 comments, 350 of them are like, go ICE.
Yeah.
I think people are tired of this. And the other thing too that happens is everybody's protesting about, like the people they pick up. Well, I think it was the other day someplace. Oh, here we go again. I think it was the other day someplace. We had somebody pick something up. And I have a blind dog, by the way. Everybody should know I have a blind dog. So when it goes off, he runs and he hits like 19 things.
Oh.
When it goes, that is what it is. But the thing is that, so I do think, getting back to the ICE thing, I think the ICE thing is, I don't think it's hurting Trump the way they said it is. Axios had a story, people are getting nervous. That's the usual people in that place that like grind their hands and worry about everything. I wonder if they have like a list at the White House where they go, okay, like how people wore certain badges. I wonder if people have a list where they knew exactly this person will, if the press sits around and they go, that guy will turn, she'll turn. You could probably tell by what dinner parties they show up at. You can always tell the squishes by their social life. A guy told me that in DC. Oh, what's his name who told me that? Walter Pincus. Remember the famous?
Oh, yeah, sure.
He said that. He said, you always know who wants to talk by what social circles they're trying to get into. Which is true. I mean, it's almost spycraft. You know what I'm saying? The couple that really wants to live in Georgetown, and he's an SES2 and she's a GS14 or something like that, and they're desperate to get invited to that Katharine Graham thing. And so Katharine Graham invites you because she knows you're the former whatever it is at the agency or at the State Department, you know what I'm saying? And magically she sits you beside her. She used to do this, by the way. That's like actually, I think she would invite these government officials and she'd sit like her reporters beside them. And she was really,
that's interesting.
It's brilliant, actually. You know what I'm saying? It's really brilliant. You
think that's how Madeleine Albright elevated herself in Democrat circles. I can't remember if she had been something in Carter, but along comes Clinton. It's been 12 years in the wilderness, but she had done a bunch of salon-style dinners at her place in Georgetown to create the.
Look, I got to tell you, I think getting back to this, it's the one thing that I think is really interesting here. I'm starting to think that the noise in the world that everybody thinks is important is not as important as people think it is, and I think that's the one thing that Trump has figured out. I don't like him, but Vivek Ramaswamy seems to have figured that out. He's just not going to go on Twitter and engage. He's going to basically run this old style, full on, non-social media campaign in Ohio and get the nomination. Now he's not doing, I think he's going to lose myself. I think when they finish with her, when they run next year, she's going to have a complete makeover. They're apparently upgrading her staff. They're giving her good people to run her campaign. You know what I'm saying? And she's apparently practicing all the time. What I heard was, because she's a big lefty, I heard that she has literally got like cards at home, like learning a foreign language, like moderate, capitalism. So she's learning these words, shareholders, she's learning all these words, because she wants
P is for profit.
Yeah, she wants to scream out all these things like, I'm taking your property now, But the thing is that, but I think he's very vulnerable. But in fairness to him, he knows he can't win on Twitter. So he's not engaging on Twitter anymore. He's not engaging in Instagram. He's putting stuff up there, but he's not letting you comment, which is impossible because people can just take it and go with it. But but the thing is, I think Trump has figured that out too. Trump just talks above everybody else. He goes directly to the people. But I do think that, I was talking to somebody the other day, when I was in D.C. like last week, and they think the signs of basically him starting to finally understand that he's got only a limited amount of time left. I don't think he has 10 months left. I think he has basically 6 to 8. I think come August, pretty much everybody's, doing the math. Now
Yeah.
he may get, if we think we're going to lose the House badly, he may get a couple of runs. Also, he may get some stuff out of some of these Democrats who are retiring, because a lot of them are retiring. So he may get some of the moderate Democrats who might come over on some common sense stuff.
Right. Well, where does that? So if he's in a position of power, I mean, you're right. I think he can lose the House, and it might actually be good for us. I don't know. Other people would say
I
no,
think it's good
it's
for
bad.
us.
I mean, they might impeach him. That might also be
Fine.
okay. You're what, third time you guys have done this over what?
It's meaningless.
Nonsense. But that leaves him, I think, and so if you're Xi Jinping and you look at this, you may have a little bit of puzzlement about Congress since you don't really have to deal with one over there. But I think they know that it's just kind of little yap dogs biting at your ankles at worst. So you're in a position of power as Trump, and you go into this summit with Xi Jinping. Maybe we could wind up on this. It seems, I mean, Trump has made some concessions, frankly, to China. Part of that is fighting a multi-front trade war, not just against China. So we have this China trade deal. It's not really inked yet, although maybe it's sort of a modus vivendi, if you'll excuse the fancy term. But it seems like he's given some things to the Chicoms, and they should reciprocate. I mean, we've talked, one of the things they could do is, as a gesture of goodwill, would be to expel Jimmy Lai and the other Hong Kong people. Do you think that might be in the offing, or what else should the Chinese? I mean, it seems like it's time for China to make a move if they want to, keep in Trump's good graces.
I kind of always, even when I was in Hong Kong and I was doing stuff, actually, even in when I was, helping people in Philippines and helping, I stay away from the U.S. government. I'm not looking to be part of their plans. You know what I'm saying? So people say, I think what you do is you put pressure, and then hopefully something happens. I think there's smart people out there, and what they want is they want the pressure to go away. So if the Chinese want to never hear from Mark Simon again, if they picked up the phone and said, hey, if you shut up and never come to Asia again, other than on vacation, if you never come to Asia again, we'll give you Jimmy Lai back. Okay, deal. We'll give. I'd change anything. I'd trade anything for Jimmy. But the thing is like, do they have the brains to do it? I don't know. I think the real thing that's coming up here in the administration, and I'm pushing it hard. I don't have any influence in the administration. I'm the first one to tell people. I got a few people that read some of my stuff. Here's my point. I think what we're seeing and what we saw out of the Chinese with Carney and with some other people, I think we're seeing the Chinese they're out of gas. They don't have anything to give. The Irish got a small beef, by our standards, a small beef deal. That was a big deal for the Irish. They got a beef deal to sell beef into China. Okay. That's great. It's good for Ireland. What are we talking about here? $100 million a year, maybe, you know what I'm saying, in beef? Not even that, from what I understand. So they got a beef deal selling beef to China. That helps the British, that helps the Irish farmers. That's good, and it's something that's achievable. And the Chinese need the beef because they want to diversify their sources. So you got a Chinese beef deal. What else can the Chinese do? They've got a shrinking economy. They have got horrible demographic news. Now, people may not know much. Hong Kong's a city of 7 million people. In 2025, of that city of 7 million people, there were 35,000 babies born. That's all. That's literally half of what was born. I mean, that means unless there's a mass wave of children coming in, and there won't be, essentially, compared to what's in schools today, half the schools in Hong Kong have to close within basically 10 years. Half. And we know that. In other words, so that's going to change a lot. But I think that's the thing. I think what does Trump get? And I'm not sure. There's a lot to give because you said it at the beginning, and I'll finish on this. But like Japan has changed everything. Our ally, once you add Japan to the defensive mix of Taiwan, the Chinese aren't going anywhere. They're not going to do anything because there's no way they're going to take on the Japanese and the Americans. Because if the Japanese say they're coming in, well, then the Americans are going to come in. There's no way. You know what I'm saying? You could have all the JD Vance guys and everybody else, but even Colby, whatever Bridge Colby is coming in if Japan's attacked. The U.S. Navy would probably just put themselves in a position. A friend of mine used to say that. People go, well, what's going to happen if China comes in? Will the U.S. come in? The guy goes, oh, you mean Harry Harris? When Harry Harris was the Admiral of the 7th Fleet? Harry, when he's the 7th Fleet, he would just go park some battleships, some disposable ships, probably down off, on the
Yes.
on the west
Called
side.
the littoral combat ship. Yeah.
Yeah, pass them, put a couple of ships down there, and the Chinese are going to take a shot, and then we're in, and don't think that they're above that, because they don't want to lose it. But I myself, that sounds sweet, but I myself think that I think the real thing that's coming out of this, and it's coming up, is that China doesn't have what the world needs anymore. It's a shrinking market. And so the question is, as soon as people determine you're a shrinking market, it's over. That's the tragedy of Canada, by the way. I wish we would have handled Canada would have handled the U.S. and we could have handled ourselves a little bit differently. If Carney could have stomached Trump for another 6 months, he'd be cutting the same deal that they cut with Taiwan or something like that. There would have been a commonality. You just had to ride it out for a little bit. And Carney is so grossly opposed to Trump personally that he couldn't do it. It's a real sign of immaturity, and Trump living rent-free in his head. Anyway, all right, well, it's a snowy day here in New Jersey, so.
Okay, well, it is here in Colorado, too. Great. Well, that's it for this